There's a moment that comes for everyone, usually later than it should, when you realize that nobody is coming to save you, that the rescue you've been waiting for isn't coming, that the mentor who's supposed to appear and guide you, the opportunity that's supposed to fall into your lap, the relationship that's supposed to fix everything, the stroke of luck that's supposed to change your circumstances, none of it is coming. And you're standing exactly where you've been standing, waiting for something external to change your internal reality. And the waiting is the problem. The waiting is what's keeping you stuck, because waiting is passive and your life requires active participation, requires you to be the one who shows up for yourself when nobody else does. We're raised on stories where rescue comes, where the hero is discovered or chosen or saved by some external force, where potential is recognized and elevated by others, where hard work is always rewarded and talent is always noticed, and if you just wait your turn and do everything right, someone will eventually see you and give you what you deserve. But that's a story, that's fiction, that's not how the world actually works. And believing it keeps you passive, keeps you waiting, keeps you looking outside yourself for solutions that can only come from inside yourself. Nobody is coming to save you from your job that makes you miserable. Nobody is coming to save you from your relationship that isn't working. Nobody is coming to save you from your debt or your health problems or your lack of direction. Nobody is coming to suddenly recognize your potential and hand you opportunities. Nobody is coming to fix the parts of your life that aren't working. And this is either the most depressing realization you've ever had or the most liberating, depending on what you do with it. Because if nobody's coming to save you, then you're also not helpless. You're not at the mercy of external forces. You're not waiting for permission or recognition or the right circumstances. You just have to start. The uncomfortable truth is that most of what keeps you stuck isn't your circumstances. It's your relationship to your circumstances. It's the story you're telling yourself about why you can't do anything until something else happens first. Why you can't start until you have more time or more money or more support or more clarity. Why you need someone else to validate or enable or rescue you before you can act. And those stories feel true. They feel like legitimate obstacles. But mostly they're just ways of avoiding the terror of taking responsibility for your own life. Taking responsibility is terrifying because it means acknowledging that if your life isn't what you want it to be, that's on you, not completely on you. Not everything is in your control. But the parts that are in your control are your responsibility, and you've probably been avoiding that responsibility because it's easier to blame circumstances or other people or bad luck than it is to look at the ways you've been complicit in your own stuckness, the ways you've chosen comfort over change, the ways you've prioritized avoiding discomfort over pursuing what you actually want. Think about the things you complain about regularly, the parts of your life that frustrate you, the situations you describe as problems but do nothing to change, and ask yourself honestly whether you're actually trying to fix them or whether you're just managing them, just surviving them, just waiting for them to magically improve without you having to do the uncomfortable work of changing them. Because there's a difference between being stuck in circumstances you genuinely can't control and being stuck in circumstances you could change but choose not to because change is hard and scary and uncertain. I know what it feels like to wait for rescue. I've done it. I've spent years in situations that weren't working, convinced that something external would shift, that someone would see my potential or that circumstances would change or that I'd suddenly have the resources or clarity or support I needed to make a move. And what actually happened is I stayed stuck, stayed waiting, stayed telling myself the story that I couldn't act until conditions were different. And the conditions never got different because I wasn't doing anything to make them different. I was just waiting, and waiting accomplished nothing except wasting time. The shift happened when I realized, really internalized, that nobody was coming. That if I wanted my life to be different, I had to be the one to make it different. That I couldn't wait for permission or the perfect moment or external validation. I just had to start. Even if I didn't know exactly where I was going. Even if I didn't have all the resources I thought I needed. Even if I was scared and uncertain and had no guarantee it would work. Because the alternative was staying exactly where I was. And staying exactly where I was had become more painful than the risk of trying and failing. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending that circumstances don't matter or that everyone has equal opportunity to change their situation. Some circumstances are genuinely constraining. Some obstacles are real and structural and not just mindset problems. But even within real constraints, there's usually more agency than we're using, more action we could take, more responsibility we could claim. And avoiding that agency because it's easier to feel helpless than to feel responsible is understandable, but it doesn't actually help. It just keeps you stuck while feeling like you have a good reason to be stuck. Nobody is coming to save you from yourself, from your own patterns and habits and ways of thinking that keep recreating the same problems. Nobody is coming to interrupt your self-sabotage or your avoidance or your tendency to choose comfort over growth. Nobody is coming to force you to do the things you know you should do but keep not doing. And this is hard to accept because it means that you're the main obstacle. You're the thing standing between your current life and the life you say you want. Not completely, not entirely, but enough that if you're waiting for external rescue, you're going to keep waiting. The world doesn't care about your potential. The world doesn't care about your dreams or your plans or your good intentions. The world only responds to action, to what you actually do rather than what you think about doing. And if you're spending more time planning and preparing and waiting for the right conditions than you are actually doing things, then you're using planning as a form of avoidance. You're using preparation as an excuse not to start. You're using the lack of perfect conditions as a reason to stay comfortable instead of taking uncomfortable action. The pattern looks like this. You have an idea or a goal or a vision for something you want to do or become, and immediately your brain starts generating a list of reasons why you can't start yet, why the conditions aren't right, why you need to wait until you have more information or more resources or more certainty. And these reasons sound legitimate. They sound like responsible planning, like being realistic about obstacles. But what they actually are is fear disguised as prudence, avoidance, disguised as preparation. And the longer you let them stop you from starting, the more convinced you become that they're real obstacles rather than just excuses. I see this constantly, in myself and in people I talk to, this tendency to wait for some magical alignment of circumstances before taking action, waiting until you have enough money saved, waiting until you have more free time, waiting until you've done more research, waiting until you feel ready, waiting until the risk feels smaller. But the conditions never align perfectly, the risk never feels small enough. You never feel completely ready. And while you're waiting, the years pass and the idea stays an idea and nothing actually happens except more waiting. The people who actually build the lives they want aren't smarter than you or more talented than you or luckier than you. They just have a different relationship to starting. They start before they're ready. They start with incomplete information. They start while they're still scared. They start without knowing exactly where they're going or how it's going to work out. They just start. And then they figure it out as they go. They iterate, they adjust. They learn by doing rather than learning by researching doing. And this willingness to start messy and uncertain is what separates people who achieve things from people who spend their lives planning to achieve things. You don't need perfect conditions to start. You need barely adequate conditions to start. You need just enough resources and just enough time and just enough clarity to take one small action. And then that action creates information, creates momentum, creates the next possible action. And slowly, through a series of imperfect actions taken under imperfect conditions, you build something real, something that exists outside your head. Something that has substance and impact and reality, whereas if you wait for perfect conditions, you build nothing. You just have an increasingly elaborate plan for something you're never going to actually do. The myth of readiness is particularly destructive because it feels so responsible. It feels like you're being smart and careful and mature by waiting until you're truly prepared. But readiness is mostly a feeling, not a state. And the feeling of readiness comes from doing the thing, not from preparing to do the thing. You become ready by starting and fumbling and learning, not by thinking about starting until you feel confident. Because confidence without experience is just delusion, and experience only comes from doing. Think about the things you've been putting off, the projects or conversations or changes you've been avoiding, and notice what story you're telling yourself about why you can't do them yet. Notice whether that story is actually true or whether it's just your brain's way of protecting you from discomfort and uncertainty and risk, because your brain is designed to keep you safe, not to help you grow. And safety and growth often pull in opposite directions. And if you let safety win every time, you stay small and stuck and perpetually waiting for a better moment that never comes. Starting doesn't mean quitting your job or blowing up your life or making dramatic, irreversible changes. Starting means taking the smallest possible action that moves you toward what you want. Sending one email, making one phone call, spending 30 minutes on the project, having the conversation you've been avoiding, taking literally any action that breaks the pattern of waiting and planning and preparing without doing. Because the gap between 0 and 1 is enormous. The gap between not doing and doing is the entire difference. And once you're doing, you can iterate and improve and course correct. But if you're not doing, then nothing happens. Nothing changes. You just stay exactly where you are. The fear is that if you start before you're ready, you'll fail. You'll waste time and energy and money on something that doesn't work. You'll look foolish. You'll prove that you can't do it. But the reality is that most failures aren't catastrophic. Most failures are just learning experiences disguised as setbacks. Most failures teach you something useful that you couldn't have learned without trying. And the only way to actually waste time is to spend it waiting to start, because at least failing moves you forward. At least failing gives you information, whereas waiting gives you nothing except more reasons to keep waiting. I've failed at more things than I've succeeded at. I've started projects that went nowhere, taken risks that didn't pay off, invested time and money in things that ultimately didn't work, and none of those failures destroyed me. None of them were as bad as I feared they'd be, and all of them taught me something I couldn't have learned by just thinking about doing the thing. They taught me what works and what doesn't. They taught me what I'm capable of and what I need to improve. They taught me that I can survive failure, and that failure is just part of the process of figuring things out. The alternative to risking failure is accepting stagnation, accepting that your life will stay roughly the same as it is right now because you're not willing to do anything that might not work, and maybe your life right now is fine, maybe it's comfortable and stable and safe, but if it's not what you want, if there's this persistent low-level dissatisfaction, this feeling that you're capable of more or meant for something different, or slowly suffocating under the weight of a life that doesn't fit you, then comfort and stability and safety aren't actually serving you, they're just keeping you trapped in a situation that's slowly eroding your sense of possibility. Nobody is coming to give you permission to start. Nobody is coming to tell you that now is the right time, or that you're ready, or that your idea is worth pursuing. You have to give yourself permission. You have to decide that you're ready enough, and the time is right enough, and the idea is worth enough to be worth trying. Even if it doesn't work, even if you fail, even if you look foolish. Because the cost of not trying is living with the constant background noise of regret and wondering. Living with the knowledge that you had ideas and dreams and possibilities, but you were too scared to find out if they could become real. The world is full of people who had ideas they never pursued, who wanted to start businesses or write books or make career changes or leave relationships or move to new cities but talked themselves out of it, convinced themselves it was too risky or too late or too hard. And most of those people, if you talk to them honestly, will tell you that their biggest regret isn't the things they tried that didn't work. It's the things they never tried at all, the possibilities they never explored, the versions of themselves they never became because they were too afraid to start. Starting is an act of faith. Faith that you'll figure it out as you go. Faith that you're capable of learning and adapting and handling whatever comes. Faith that the process of trying is valuable, even if the outcome isn't what you hoped for. And this kind of faith isn't about being confident or certain. It's about being willing to move forward despite uncertainty. Being willing to be uncomfortable and confused and imperfect in service of becoming something more than you currently are. The hardest part about taking responsibility for your own life isn't the practical stuff. It's not figuring out what actions to take or how to solve problems. It's the emotional weight of accepting that you're the architect of your circumstances, that the life you're living is largely the result of thousands of small choices you've made, most of them unconsciously, most of them prioritizing short-term comfort over long-term growth. And once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to blaming external forces or bad luck or other people. You have to look at yourself and acknowledge that you've been complicit in creating the situation you're now complaining about. This doesn't mean everything is your fault. Some things genuinely happen to you through no fault of your own. Some circumstances are imposed on you by systems and structures and other people's choices, but even within those constraints you have more agency than you're probably using, more choices available to you than you're probably making. And the difference between people who feel powerless and people who feel in control of their lives often comes down to this willingness to focus on the parts they can influence rather than the parts they can't. I spent years feeling like my life was happening to me, like I was just reacting to circumstances, just trying to survive whatever situation I found myself in. And this felt true. It felt like I didn't have options, like I was stuck in a series of situations I didn't choose and couldn't escape. But the reality is I was choosing every day to stay in those situations. I was choosing not to have difficult conversations, choosing not to take risks, choosing not to make changes, and I called that being stuck, but it was actually just being scared. Just choosing the known discomfort over the unknown possibility of something better. The shift from feeling powerless to feeling powerful isn't about changing your circumstances. It's about changing your relationship to your circumstances. It's about recognizing that even when you can't control what happens to you, you can control how you respond. You can control what meaning you make of it. You can control whether you let it define you or whether you use it as information about what needs to change. And this shift in perspective is everything. It's the difference between victim and protagonist, between someone things happen to and someone who happens to things. You know those people who seem to navigate life with this sense of agency and momentum, who seem to make things happen rather than waiting for things to happen to them, who face obstacles and immediately start problem solving rather than getting paralyzed or resentful. Those people aren't operating with different circumstances than you. They're not luckier or more privileged or more talented. They just have a different operating system. They've internalized this idea that they're responsible for their own experience, that if something isn't working they need to change it, that if they want something they need to go get it, that nobody owes them anything and nothing is guaranteed, and the only way to build the life they want is to actively build it. This operating system, this sense of personal responsibility and agency, is learnable. It's not something you're born with or without. It's something you cultivate by repeatedly making the choice to act rather than wait, to try rather than complain, to take responsibility rather than assign blame. And every time you make that choice, it gets a little easier, the pattern gets a little stronger, until eventually acting and trying and taking responsibility becomes your default rather than something you have to force yourself to do. But here's what makes it hard. Taking responsibility feels bad at first. It feels like admitting you've been wrong, like acknowledging you've wasted time, like accepting that you could have changed things earlier but chose not to, and all of that is uncomfortable and a little shameful, and your ego really doesn't like it. Your ego wants to protect you by maintaining the story that you're doing your best and circumstances are just difficult and it's not your fault, but that protective story is also a prison. It keeps you feeling better about staying stuck instead of feeling worse about making changes. You have to be willing to feel the discomfort of recognizing your own role in your stuckness. You have to be willing to look at the ways you've been avoiding and procrastinating and choosing comfort over growth. You have to be willing to acknowledge that you've had more options than you've been admitting to yourself. And this acknowledgement isn't about beating yourself up or drowning in guilt. It's about seeing clearly so you can move forward differently. It's about trading the false comfort of blamelessness for the real power of agency. The question to ask yourself isn't, whose fault is this, but what can I do about this? Not, why is this happening to me, but how can I respond to this in a way that moves me forward? Not, who should fix this, but what part of this can I fix? And these shifts in framing completely change your relationship to your circumstances. They move you from passive victim to active agent, from someone who needs rescue to someone who rescues themselves. Nobody is coming to rescue you from your own habits, from your tendency to avoid difficult conversations or procrastinate on important work or prioritize comfort over challenge. Nobody is coming to interrupt your patterns of self-sabotage or make you do the things you know you should do but keep not doing. And this is actually good news because it means you don't have to wait for permission or perfect conditions or external motivation. You can just start doing things differently right now. Today, this moment, you can make one choice that's aligned with who you want to become rather than who you've been, and then you can make another choice, and slowly through accumulated choices you become someone different. Someone who does the things they say they're going to do, someone who follows through, someone who takes responsibility. The gap between your current self and your desired self isn't about some massive transformation that requires perfect conditions and enormous effort. It's about the accumulation of small choices made consistently over time. It's about choosing the slightly harder thing repeatedly until the slightly harder thing becomes your normal. And this is both encouraging and frustrating because it means change is always available to you, but also that there's no shortcut, no way to skip the actual process of making different choices and dealing with the discomfort that comes with breaking old patterns and building new ones. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. They expect dramatic immediate results and get discouraged when change feels slow. But meaningful change is almost always slow. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's making the same choice over and over until it becomes automatic. And if you're waiting for change to feel exciting or dramatic or easy, you're going to be waiting forever. Because real change mostly feels like nothing. It feels like doing something slightly uncomfortable repeatedly until one day you realize you've become someone who does that thing, someone who has that habit, someone who lives that way. Here's what I want you to understand. The moment you stop waiting for rescue and start taking responsibility for your own life is the moment everything changes. Not because your circumstances suddenly improve, not because the obstacles disappear, but because you stop being at the mercy of external forces and start being the author of your own story. And that shift in identity, from victim to protagonist, from passive to active, from someone waiting for permission to someone who gives themselves permission, that shift is the entire difference between a life that feels like it's happening to you and a life that feels like you're actively creating it. Nobody is coming to save you, and that's not a tragedy, that's liberation. That's the removal of the excuse you've been using to stay stuck. That's the end of the waiting period and the beginning of the doing period. And yes, it's scary, and yes, it's uncomfortable, and yes, you're going to fail sometimes, and yes, you're going to doubt yourself, and yes, there will be moments when you wish someone would just tell you what to do or make the decisions for you or fix the problems you're facing. But those moments pass, and what remains is the knowledge that you're capable, that you can figure things out, that you can survive failure and learn from mistakes and keep moving forward even when it's hard. The life you want isn't going to fall into your lap. It's not going to be handed to you by someone who recognizes your potential. It's not going to materialize because you waited long enough or prepared thoroughly enough or deserved it badly enough. It's going to exist because you built it, because you took imperfect action repeatedly, because you started before you were ready and learned as you went, because you claimed responsibility for your own experience and stopped outsourcing your agency to circumstances or other people or luck. And look, I know this sounds harsh. I know it sounds like I'm putting all the burden on you and ignoring the very real ways that circumstances and systems and other people's choices constrain what's possible for you. And I'm not ignoring that. I'm not saying everyone has equal opportunity or that positive thinking overcomes structural obstacles or that you can just manifest whatever you want if you believe hard enough. That's nonsense. That's toxic positivity that ignores reality. What I'm saying is that within whatever constraints you're operating under, you have more agency than you're probably using, more choices available than you're probably making. And the difference between feeling powerless and feeling powerful often comes down to whether you're focused on what you can't control or what you can. You can't control the economy or other people's opinions or the opportunities available to you or how your past has shaped you, but you can control what you do today. You can control the choices you make in this moment. You can control whether you take one small action toward what you want or whether you spend another day waiting and planning and preparing without doing. And those choices compound. They accumulate. They build on each other until one day you look up and realize you've become someone different, someone who acts rather than waits, someone who takes responsibility rather than assigns blame, someone who builds the life they want rather than hoping it will somehow appear. This isn't easy. Change is never easy. Taking responsibility is never comfortable. Starting before you're ready is never fun. But the alternative is staying exactly where you are, and if where you are isn't where you want to be, then staying there isn't actually the safe choice. It's just the familiar choice. And familiar isn't the same as good. Familiar is just what you're used to. And what you're used to might be slowly killing your sense of possibility, slowly eroding your belief that your life could be different, slowly convincing you that this is just how things are and how they'll always be. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to accept the life you have as the life you're stuck with. You can start changing it right now, today, this moment, not by making some dramatic gesture or waiting for perfect conditions or hoping someone will rescue you, but by making one small choice that's aligned with who you want to become, by taking one small action toward what you want, by claiming one small piece of responsibility for your own experience, and then tomorrow you can do it again, and the day after that, and slowly, through accumulated choices and actions and claimed responsibility, you become someone different, someone who doesn't wait for rescue because they don't need it, someone who saves themselves. If you've made it this far in the video, I want to say thank you. Thank you for spending this time thinking about these ideas, thinking about your own life and your own patterns and your own relationship to responsibility and agency. And if any of this resonated with you, if any of this felt true or useful or challenging in a good way, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, because I make videos like this regularly, videos about psychology and behavior and how to navigate modern life, and your subscription helps me keep making them. Helps me reach more people who might benefit from hearing these ideas, so if you found value here, hit that subscribe button. It genuinely makes a difference. The truth is, nobody is coming to save you, but you don't need saving. You need to start. You need to stop waiting and start doing. Stop planning and start acting. Stop looking for permission and start giving it to yourself. And yes, it's hard, and yes, it's scary, and yes, you'll make mistakes. But making mistakes while moving forward is better than doing nothing while standing still. And the only way to build the life you want is to build it. One choice at a time. One action at a time. One day at a time. And the best time to start was 5 years ago, but the second best time is right now. So stop waiting, stop looking for rescue, and start saving yourself, because you're the only one who can. Nobody is coming to save you, and that's the best news you'll hear all day, because it means you don't have to wait anymore. You don't have to hope someone else will fix your problems or recognize your potential or give you permission to start. You can just start. Right now, today, this moment, and every moment after this is an opportunity to make a different choice, to take a different action, to become a different person. And the only question is whether you're going to take it or whether you're going to keep waiting for rescue that isn't coming. And I hope you take it. I hope you start. I hope you claim your agency and your responsibility and your power to shape your own life, because you deserve to live a life you actively create rather than one you passively accept. And the only person who can make that happen is you. So stop waiting. Start now. Save yourself.